talk about the war with you?
He never ever talked about it. Like so many of my friends of my generation, their fathers never, until pain and strife. So I suppose kids in the mid-50s in Britain were just starting to wake up after there was no etiquette developed yet. There was no, the last thing we were was a good bet to have on a talk show or...
Robert Plant, the iconic frontman of Led Zeppelin, is as famous for his brutal honesty as he is for his legendary voice and stage presence. Unlike many rock stars who continue to bask in the glow of their past accomplishments, Plant has always been unafraid to speak his mind, often offering scathing critiques of both fellow musicians and his own legacy. His candid remarks have shocked fans and peers alike, revealing a side of him that is far from the typical rock star persona. While some musicians cling to the glory days of their bands, Plant has distanced himself from nostalgia, choosing instead to offer a refreshingly honest perspective on the music industry. In this script, we'll delve into the 5 bands that Robert Plant has openly criticized, exploring the reasons behind his disapproval and how these opinions have shaped his identity as both an artist and a critic.
There was no etiquette developed yet. There was no, the last thing we were was a good bet to have on a talk show or anything like that, you know. It was a time to be proud of our music, and also, now that I know now the way that everything's gone, look where we are, you know, in Warner Brothers, the home of Once Upon a Time, Atlantic Records and all, the great stuff. There were no rules, things were being developed, and the journey, there was nobody could plot it. It was just, what do we do now? Oh, maybe we'll play somewhere bigger.
One of the most significant targets of Plant's criticism has been The Who, particularly their decision to continue after the death of their legendary drummer, Keith Moon, known for his chaotic and unpredictable drumming style. Moon was a key part of The Who's identity, adding an explosive energy to their performances that defined their live shows. When Moon tragically passed away in 1978, many fans expected the band to disband, but instead, they chose to carry on with a new drummer, Kenny Jones. For Plant, this decision marked a dramatic shift in the band's spirit. He found the band's post-Moon performances to be dull, obvious, and sad, accusing them of continuing on merely for the sake of it. In an interview with Rolling Stone, he remarked, "I saw The Who trundle around the stadiums of America, and I found it so dull." Plant felt that the magic of the band was lost once Moon was gone, and that their decision to persist without him diminished their legacy. The contrast between The Who's decision to continue and Led Zeppelin's choice to disband after John Bonham's death in 1980 is stark. While The Who opted to carry on with a new lineup, Led Zeppelin decided that Bonham's death was the end of their journey as a band. Plant has said that replacing Bonham would have been a disservice to their legacy, and the band's dissolution was a difficult but necessary choice to preserve the integrity of their music. The Who's perseverance might be seen as a testament to their love for music, but Plant's viewpoint underscores the debate that many rock fans face. Should legendary bands continue even when key members are gone? Or should they preserve their legacy by knowing when to call it quits? For Plant, the decision was clear. Led Zeppelin ended with Bonham, and that was the right choice for them.
Art.
Well, art's a heavy word, you know. I think craft is the term I would use, the middle term, yeah. Yeah, because I think you grow into what might initially be an infatuation with the idea of entering something very special,
Right.
very daring, and as a...
Despite being the frontman of one of the most influential rock bands in history, Robert Plant has often been outspoken about his complicated feelings toward Led Zeppelin's legacy. While many of his peers proudly bask in their past achievements, Plant has expressed discomfort with certain aspects of Zeppelin's music, particularly their most iconic songs. In an interview, Plant candidly admitted that he could understand why people might hate Stairway to Heaven, arguably the band's most famous track. He described it as pompous and overindulgent, acknowledging that its grandeur may not have aged well. This kind of self-criticism is rare among rock legends, but Plant has always been one to scrutinize his past work. He often comments that some of his own vocals make him cringe, viewing them as exaggerated and overdone, especially in tracks like Stairway to Heaven.
Pain and strife. So I suppose kids in the mid-50s in Britain were just starting to wake up after the, parents coming back from the war, or, being attracted to the footlights and the entertainment and the smell of a venue and the kind of the anticipation in a crowd. I loved that. I thought that was an amazing thing, because I've been a music fan and a fan of all things that are interesting and occasionally unique all my life. So I'm always a member of the audience and an entertainer, really. So yeah, it's a craft. Sometimes it's clever, sometimes it's a real flop,
Beyond the music itself, Plant's complicated feelings about Led Zeppelin's legacy are intertwined with personal tragedy. In 1977, he lost his 5-year-old son, Karak, to a sudden illness, an event that shattered him emotionally. At that point, Led Zeppelin was at the peak of their career. But for Plant, success meant little in the face of such overwhelming grief. He has said that in his mind, Led Zeppelin died that year, long before the band officially disbanded in 1980 after Bonham's death. Plant's emotional turmoil during this period is one of the key factors in his decision to move away from Zeppelin's legacy. While the band's later years were marked by excess and addiction, Plant began to see the music that once felt exhilarating as emotionally burdensome. When Bonham died in 1980, Plant and the rest of the band made the difficult decision to end Led Zeppelin's journey, rather than try to replace him and continue as if nothing had changed.
It was a rather austere period for Britain, at least through most, if not all, of the 50s.
Yeah, and into the 60s too, yeah. I mean, into the early 60s. And also, now I understand more about my father's generation. There were so many people that didn't come back, and every family had some member of the family who just didn't return. So those that did, my father and my mom, they drew themselves out of that, in that post-war sort of grayness. My father was aspiring.
In recent years, Greta Van Fleet has garnered attention for their classic rock sound, which many fans and critics have compared to Led Zeppelin's iconic style. With their soaring vocals, bluesy guitar riffs, and high-pitched screams, it's easy to see why the comparison has been made. However, Robert Plant has made it abundantly clear that he's not a fan of the band's sound. While Plant acknowledges Greta Van Fleet's talent, he has been particularly critical of lead singer Josh Kiska's vocal style. In one interview, Plant remarked that Kiska borrowed his voice from somebody I know very well, a comment that seemed to be both a backhanded compliment and a criticism. For Plant, the band's sound is too derivative of Led Zeppelin's music, and he finds it lacking in originality.
Talk about the war with you?
He never ever talked about it. Like so many of my friends of my generation, their fathers never, until his very latter days, and then he came out with some real corkers, some very funny stories, of which obviously he was giving us the funny stuff. But yeah, That generation didn't say much.
That generation didn't say much. Now, do you think that's the reason, or not, that so many of rock and roll's biggest stars, most successful people, came out of the post-World War II generation? You think that was part of it?
I think definitely there was a kind of grim, determination to get on from our parents' generation. But for us, we didn't have any real measure of what they had been dealing with. So we were just going, hey, let's go. What's happening? Wow, there's Little Richard. Little Richard. This guy banging the piano with a pompadour who was driving us mad, so good. And Bill Haley.
While some see Greta Van Fleet as a welcome revival of classic rock, Plant views them as a band stuck in the past, trying to recreate the magic of a bygone era without bringing anything new to the table. In his eyes, their music is an imitation, rather than an evolution of the classic rock genre. Unlike Zeppelin, who continuously pushed boundaries and explored new sounds, Greta Van Fleet seems content to recycle a familiar sound that Plant himself has long since outgrown. Plant's critique of Greta Van Fleet is more than just a jab at their vocals. It's a reflection of his own journey as an artist. Throughout his solo career, Plant has actively distanced himself from the nostalgia of Led Zeppelin, choosing instead to explore folk, blues, and world music. For him, the idea of a band like Greta Van Fleet hearkening back to a time he's tried to move past is somewhat frustrating.
Frenetic energy, and it was not always other bands that were in the middle of it. I don't think it was particularly a magnificent achievement.
The Doors, with their brooding mystique and poetic lyrics, are often hailed as one of the most influential bands of the 1960s. However, Robert Plant has expressed skepticism about their artistic approach, particularly the stage presence of their frontman, Jim Morrison. While Morrison is revered for his poetic lyricism and charismatic, albeit sometimes erratic, performances, Plant was less impressed. One of Plant's biggest criticisms of Morrison was his theatricality. Plant felt that Morrison's poetic recitations and abstract lyrics often felt forced and self-indulgent. He saw Morrison's performances as overly dramatic and not grounded in the raw, organic energy that characterized Led Zeppelin's shows. Morrison's habit of reciting long, abstract poetry during live performances, while compelling to some, was seen by Plant as a distraction from the music itself. For Plant, rock and roll was about energy, passion, and spontaneity, qualities that he felt Morrison's performances lacked. Morrison's self-proclaimed role as a rock poet was often viewed by Plant as a manufactured persona, rather than a genuine artistic expression. Led Zeppelin's music, on the other hand, was rooted in folk, blues, and hard rock traditions, and Plant preferred to engage with the audience through pure musical expression rather than over-intellectualizing the art.
I was in Australia once, in Melbourne. I remember waking up and we'd sold out a kind of some huge stadium. The stage was on wheels, so they got it so that if we had 10,000 people, that was fine, but if it was 12...
While Morrison's influence on rock music cannot be denied, Plant's critique offers an interesting contrast between two different approaches to performance. One that embraced theatricality and philosophy, and another that thrived on raw musical energy and spontaneity.
The best of it. You said there'd be no trick questions. I think maybe the best of it is that our time initially...
Guns N' Roses is one of the most notorious rock bands in history, not only for their raw, powerful sound, but also for their larger-than-life rock star antics. Axl Rose in particular, gained a reputation for his unpredictable behavior, late concert starts, and occasional storming off stage. These rock star behaviors did not sit well with Robert Plant, who values professionalism and punctuality in live performances. Plant has been particularly vocal about Guns N' Roses' tendency to show up late for shows, which he found unprofessional and frustrating. He sarcastically remarked, "If you're going to be late, at least be good," suggesting that if the band was going to delay their performances, they should at least deliver an exceptional show when they finally did take the stage. Plant's comments reflect his belief that rock shows should be about the music and the audience, rather than the drama surrounding the band. While Guns N' Roses may have captured the public's attention with their rebellious image, Plant was more focused on the substance of their performances. He believed that the band relied too much on style and spectacle, rather than true artistic depth. Despite the success of Appetite for Destruction, Plant implied that Guns N' Roses was more about controversy and excess than musical innovation.
And he had a kind of dish on his head and put a camera down my throat, and he said, in 6 months' time, your voice won't even be able to show signs of surprise. He said, it's over.
Robert Plant's criticisms of these 5 bands reflect his uncompromising views on authenticity, professionalism, and artistic integrity. While his comments may seem harsh to some, they offer valuable insights into what Plant values in music: energy, spontaneity, and a refusal to rely on past glories. From his disapproval of The Who's persistence after Keith Moon's death to his critique of Greta Van Fleet's imitation of Led Zeppelin's sound, Plant has always spoken his mind, whether the subject is his own band or the latest rock trend. For Plant, the journey has always been about moving forward, not living in the past. His opinions challenge the very notion of what it means to preserve a legacy. And he has shown that true artists are always evolving, never afraid to call out mediocrity, and never afraid to reinvent themselves. While the bands he's criticized may have their own place in rock history, Plant's perspective highlights the importance of authenticity and innovation in creating lasting, meaningful music.